Financial Stewardship 101, Biblical Budgeting, and what good stuff. I am your host, Sid Whiting, and today we are going to talk about building a budget you can live with. So, in our first session we talked about relating with money and how we all have different ways of approaching money, how some of us are more planning oriented, more saving oriented perhaps, some of us are more on the spending side of things, and or are the free spirits who just don't really need a plan. We just like to kind of, all in, go, go, go. And we talked about how those relationships help each other. We support each other, we build each other up, we fill in the holes that the other person is missing. And we talked about how God put us together in those relationships to be a support to each other. So there's not a right one or a wrong one, it's just we're complementary. We fill in for each other. Now last week we talked about specific budgeting items. You remember we talked about the giving, the saving, and then we talked about the three different tiers or levels of spending, which would be Tier 1, the 4 walls, the basics that we need to make sure are covered first. We then went on to Tier 2, which is the very important things that, we could get by with them for maybe a month or two, possibly 3, and it's not going to really hurt. But if we let it go much longer, we're going to start to notice some degradation of lifestyle and also some risk that enters in our lives. Remember we talked about the role of insurance and how that helps to mitigate some of those risks, and that's why that is so important to be a part of the budget. And then we got to the favorite part, right? Tier 3, the wants, the stuff that we're going to hit on today, and which was part of your homework assignment, so I hope you were able to get that done. Let's get rolling. So, outline for today's lesson. We're going to do our homework check and review. Just real quick, we kind of already did the review. We're going to talk about budget killers. That's the topic of today's class, is now that we got this wonderful document, this plan on paper, what is going to sneak up and try to destroy it for us? What are the biggies? Now there's all sorts of things that could do it, right? So we're going to talk about some of the more common ones. And then if you have some specific questions, we're going to have a Q&A time later on. We can maybe get to some of those. We're going to talk about how to solve those budget killers using the all-in-one sinking fund concept. We're going to deal a little bit with irregular income and cash flow management. So what do you do when your bills are here and the money isn't quite here just yet? How do you handle that? Then we're going to get to our Q&A. All right, and of course we'll have a small homework assignment at the end. All right, so homework check. You may remember this slide from last week. Did you do it? Okay, again, you have to do it or it's not going to help you. We can talk theory all day long, but until you get those numbers and you get them on the page, we've got nothing to work with, so you really have to make sure you're doing your homework. And of course our verse from James again, don't fool yourself. Don't be a listener who only listens and then does not do it. You have to act on what you hear. All right, so enough of that. Let's talk about Tier 3 once some more. Everybody like this? This is a chocolate cake with fruit on it, so it's healthy, right? And it's tasty. So, Tier 3 once. This is what we would call the icing on the cake, right? This is the stuff that makes life fun. Maybe you call it the spice of life. Whatever it is, it's the stuff. Why we do all the other things is so that we can live, and then we get to this part where we get to start having a life. This is where the free spirits should be like, yes, this is my thing. This is where I get to shine. Because we don't just plan just to plan. We have reasons. All right, let's talk a little bit about some budget killers. Housing, of course. Anybody remember the percentage we took out last time as far as what percentage we should try to stay underneath for housing expenses? I know you know the answer.
25%.
Right, we're going to try to keep it under 25%. Now again, in some markets, you might be higher than that. And I say that merely for the online folks who might be in more expensive markets. You may be a little bit higher than that. A lot of banks will loan you up to 33% of your income in payments on a mortgage. And they'll say that, less than 1/3 is okay. Yeah, you're probably not going to go to the poorhouse, but you're not going to meet a lot of goals either. You're going to be very tight. Transportation, of course. If you are in a car payment right now or a car lease, something like that, that too can be a budget killer. Now, it's not to say you can't ever have a nice car someday, but if that area is starting to go north of 20% of your budget, you're really going to be hurting. Instead of being house poor, you'll be car poor. You'll look really good, you'll pull up to the light, and you'll be like, yeah, look at me. But then once you drive off, that person you're never going to see again. They're not going to know you, you're not going to know them, and what did you really accomplish? Okay, so we'll talk about cars. Eating out. Oh, that's just a killer, right? When you take your lunch to work, it's cheap, it's inexpensive, you have control. When you just go to work every day, you kind of eat out here, you eat out there, next thing you know, all your money's gone. Okay? Toys. These would be adult toys, okay? So motorcycles, boats, 25 guns or whatever. Whatever your toy is. Everybody's got a toy, right? I know Mr. Schaller, he collects coins, so maybe that's a toy for him, He can probably do without it, but it's what makes his life fun. He enjoys that. That's a toy, and it has a place in the budget. It certainly does. Gifts. Oh, we're Christians, right? We like to be givers. We like to give. But we have to make sure that we do it within proportion. Okay? Need to be in proportion. All right, so the big ticket items. Strategies for dealing with big ticket budget killers. Hopefully you had a chance to think about some of these things since we talked about sinking funds last week. You had a chance to think about, well, what are big expenses that are coming down the road? Do I have a car that's coming up and needs replaced? Do I have a child who's getting ready to go to college, or children getting ready to go to college? Anybody here like me, you've got kids who need braces? Yeah. I've got one, possibly two, and we don't know about the third one yet. So we're gearing up for that. It's coming, so we got to get ready for it. And a sinking fund approach is going to be perfect. So I just put a few common items up here. Christmas, car, tuition, all sorts of things we can use a sinking fund for. So let's just talk about a quick scenario here. Joe has a Honda Accord, and he estimates it has about 3 more years of life left in it. Now, how can you know how much life your car has? Any guesses, any thoughts? Because that's always a challenge. Sometimes you wonder, well, is my car about to die or not? What do you think?
One way is to go by mileage.
Okay, mileage, right? There's some pretty good mileage estimates out online. You can say most cars that have been built within the past 10 to 15 years probably are going to go 100,000 at least before you start putting big bucks into them. Now, that's not to say some of them won't, need some money, but 100,000 is fairly good. I've got a 99 Camaro. It's still running. 175,000 miles. It goes from A to B. Okay? Anybody got a car like that? Okay, yeah, there's a few folks in here. All right? But for the sake of this, we're just going to say Joe thinks he's got about 3 more years of life. Now, maybe the car is not about to die. Maybe he just wants a nicer car, and he's had this thing for a while, so he wants to replace it. So he wants to get a $10,000 reliable, safe, well, have to think about safety, well-maintained car. That's a key concept. You don't want to buy a piece of junk. For getting to and from work, that's his only goal. He doesn't need it to impress anybody. He doesn't need it just as a midlife crisis. He just needs a car to get to work. Okay? So how much money is he going to have to save per month to reach this target? Okay? I don't know if anybody's good at mental math, but if we do a little bit of that, we find out he needs $278 a month. That's over 36 months. At the end of that time, he will have approximately $10,000. There were some pennies I dropped off just for rounding's sake. I'm sure you can come up with some pennies. So that's how he's going to plot out his sinking fund. Now, what if he chose not to do a sinking fund? Okay, this is what a lot of people do instead. Joe decides he's going to put 10% down of the purchase price, so $1,000 off that $10,000, and he's going to finance $9,000 balance over a 3-year loan. Okay, we gave him a fairly average car interest rate. It's an older car, probably it's not brand new, so it probably doesn't qualify for the best interest rates. Joe's got fairly decent credit, so he's probably going to qualify for somewhere in the neighborhood of a 5.9. He may be able to get a little bit better, but just for the sake, we'll say 5.9. 36 months, his payment for that would be $273 a month versus $278 for the sinking fund. So the difference here is all but negligible. It's $5 a month. Now think about this for just a minute. If Joe signs himself up for a 3-year payment plan, does he get the option to ever skip that? Not really. Not and have nothing happen to him, right? So he's in the same situation one way or the other, whether he decides to save or whether he decides to sign up for car payments. There's no difference other than $5 a month. But the difference shows up here in the total cost of the car. If we add all the interest over 36 months, we come up with he pays a total of $10,842. So if Joe goes ahead with the sunk fund approach, the sinking fund approach, and saves for that car, he's going to save himself $842 in interest. Now you may say, $10,000 car, $842, that's 8%, right? Big deal. I'd just rather have the car now, right? That's what a lot of people do when they think of this example is, I just want the car now. It's $842, I'd rather have a car now and pay the extra $842. But think about what else is hidden inside the cost of buying a car today. What's going to happen to the value of this car in 3 years? It's going to go down, right? He's going to have depreciation on that asset. By the time he gets done 3 years from now, it's going to be worth maybe $6,000. You know, it's not going to be dropping like a rock like a brand new car does, but it's still going to be depreciating. He's also going to have higher property tax on that. At the end of each year, they calculate your property tax on your vehicles. Okay, so he's going to be paying that. He's going to have a higher insurance cost on a $10,000 car versus his nice used Honda Accord or whatever. So there's some hidden costs behind that go beyond this savings here. All right, so let's keep that in mind. Now again, that may still not be enough to convince somebody to go with the sinking fund approach. But let's see what the typical American car looks like. So, $20,000, right? Now that should be a fairly nice car, I think we could all agree. This time he's going to go ahead and put his 10% down, $2,000, which leaves him an $18,000 balance to finance. And he's going to do that over 5 years because remember, Joe is kind of looking to stay in that $300 range. That's where he's looking. So he's going to have to put that on a 60-month payment term to get those payments down. And so now he's paying $342 a month on this type of a loan over that term, versus if he was to save up $333 a month in a sinking fund for 60 months, he'd be able to buy that car for cash. Okay? So the total cost of the car, once again, comes down here, $22,829, which means if he would save in the sinking fund approach, he would save, he's getting close to $3,000 there. Now maybe that's something that makes people look up at it. It's like, that's $3,000. That's a lot of money. Once again, depreciation has to factor in there. Okay? The value of that car after 5 years, I'm going to guess it's probably going to go in half, at least. So, whereas if he saves the money and then buys that car 5 years from now, he has paid $2,829 less. He has a car that's worth today $20,000 versus the $10,000 car if he had financed it and bought it 5 years ago. So there's a lot of costs in there. He's paid more property tax, he's paid more insurance, so all those are hidden costs. We have to keep those in mind. So that's just one good example of how you can use the sinking fund. Now we can actually tune that up even further. So if anybody's interested in learning more about cars and sinking funds, I've got a really neat thing I can show you, but we just don't have time to go into it right now. Let's talk about birthdays, okay? So that last item was kind of a big ticket item. Birthdays not so much, but they can still kill you if you're not paying attention, right? We love to give gifts. We love to give gifts. We like to be generous. We like to hear the squeals of joy when the kids open up the neat present. Yay, I got it! Or you've got a kid like mine who no matter what you get them, they kind of, oh, okay. Why did I finance that again? Oh, that's right, I didn't, so at least I feel good about that. All right, so let's take Sue and Joe. All right, they have each other, married, 3 kids and 5 nieces and nephews to shop for. So how many people have we got? A little quick addition there says 10, right? They have budgeted $100 per person for their immediate family, which would be the 2 of them and their kids. And then they want to do $40 per person for extended family. We love you, nieces and nephews, but sorry. We get the nice gifts, you get the okay gifts. However you want to do that. This is just an example. So how much do they need then, total? Let's do a little quick math here in our heads.
700.
Okay? The answer is 700. Excellent mental math there, okay? How long do they have to save? Now this is where it gets a little tricky on the sunk fund approach. But the problem almost answers itself. You'll see here in a minute. Okay? The amount of time they have to save is variable because not all birthdays hit at the same time. They go throughout the year. So the good thing about this is if you can start this maybe about 3 months before you need the first real big chunk, you can kind of make this one go as it, you can pay into it and take out of it as you go. That's how our family does it because our birthdays hit in June, heavy, and then I'm the October weirdo who's outlying, right? And so we have to kind of adjust ours just a little bit and make sure that we're putting in enough to kind of build it up first before we start having that money. So savings can be variable as well. There are 2 ways we can look at sinking funds to help us deal with those budget crashes because what's going to happen if we don't plan for it? It's going to show up anyway, right? We're going to need the new car someday. We're going to need to buy some presents probably for somebody. And when I say need, I mean strongly desire. Obviously, we won't die. They won't die if we don't give them presents. But we want to do those things. We really want to. And this is a strategy for how you can do it and not have to reach for the credit card every time. And hopefully never. Forward. All right, so let's do a quick activity here. Hopefully everybody has thought of at least one thing that you can use a sinking fund for. All right? Got it upstairs? All right, so what we're going to do here, oops, sorry, went too far. What I want you to do is go ahead and write down hopefully you've got your budget sheet. If you don't have your budget sheet, I think I may have a couple spares here that I can send out. But if not, just a scratch piece of paper will do fine. Anybody need a... Okay, got a couple budget sheets. All right. There we go. What I want you to do is exactly what we just did a minute ago with the car scenario. Go ahead and write down here underneath the sinking fund block one of the things that you think you can see coming down the next year perhaps, 5 years out maybe. If you want to really go long term, you can think 10 years or so. Write down one of those things. And then underneath the goal amount, you're going to say, how much do I think I need? So do I need $10,000 for a car? Do I need $20,000 for a car? Do I need $3,000 for my kids' braces? Do I need $2,000 for a mission trip I want to take? Whatever your goal might be, just go ahead and write that down. And then think about how much time it might take for you to save that amount. So hopefully if you've had a chance to kind of run that now, what we're going to see is there is a space for sinking funds, and that's up here in savings. Okay? So once you have your amount over here, you're just going to transfer that over here onto your sinking fund. All right? And this is going to help us with this all-in-one concept here in just a minute, because you're just doing one item now, maybe two if you got bored while we were waiting. Okay? Now, I am a big fan of the KISS principle. Anybody familiar with that?
Keep it simple.
Okay.
Silly.
Keep it simple, silly. Right? Keep it simple.
Yeah.
So that's why we're going to call this the all-in-one sinking fund.
Keep
Now,
it simple, student.
Student. There you go. I like that too. Yeah. Keep it simple. Don't try to overcomplicate this. When we first started doing sinking funds, we overcomplicated it massively. We had 5 different savings accounts opened up. It got silly. Every month we're making transfers to this account, transfers to this account, transfers to this account. And then when it came time, we were transferring it back. And we had passwords to remember, and oh, which account is it? And, technology helped us a little bit because you can name your account. So this is my car savings account. This is my house repair savings account, whatever, that kind of stuff. But we finally just realized, I can just write it on a piece of paper, and then as long as I'm putting the money in that I'm supposed to, it really doesn't matter when I pull it out because the money's there. So, if you need it to be specific, go ahead. Go ahead. If you need those 5 accounts or whatever to keep you from accidentally borrowing out of your car fund, and we do have a separate sunk fund for our next car. We do have that one item separate because it's such a big ticket item. But as far as birthdays, anniversaries, my daughter's martial arts testing fees that come out every other month, just everything else, property taxes, all that stuff goes into one account. We know it's going in every month. We've added up how much do we need for each particular item. That totals X number of dollars. And that goes on our budget underneath the sinking fund. The grand total of all the amounts that we need for all these different goals moves from here over to here. So once you've added up all your sinking funds here, you can just move that right over onto your total. Okay, so you have one total. And that way we know the money's there. We can just take it out as we need it. All right? So that's the concept behind the all-in-one sinking fund. Keeping it simple, but don't simplify it to the point where it doesn't work. If you notice yourself coming up short, then maybe you need to go in and retune that just a bit and say, maybe I do need a separate fund just for this item. And then I can run everything else out of it. 2 savings accounts isn't too bad. 5 was a little ridiculous for us. Okay, so that's the concept there. Now, what about those small item budget killers, right? The things that just show up and just tick away at our budgets every month, right? You wouldn't think that you could buy coffee and kill your budget, but you can. I just bought this wonderful $2 coffee down here to support the students. If I did that every day out of the month, just one time, just one coffee, right? Don't I deserve a coffee? I work hard. Don't I deserve a coffee? How much did I spend?
$60.
$60. Wow. You know how much coffee you can buy for $60 in a bag and grind at home? Yeah. And you're not going to get a $2 coffee most places, right? If you're going to get a super special coffee like that that has caramel and chocolate and milk and all sorts of stuff in it, you're going to pay what, $3, $4? $5 maybe? $5? And then there's a tip jar. Like, I walked up to the counter. You want a tip too? All right, here's 50 cents, whatever, you know. Try to be generous, $1 maybe, you know. But yeah, it gets expensive fast. It's a nice little treat every once in a while. I'm not saying you can't go get fancy coffee, but every day, wow. So what we're going to do is encourage developing an envelope system. What is an envelope system? This is probably what your grandma did. And Jess over here, she's like, yeah. She's the queen of envelopes. I meant to grab my wife's envelope system this morning and I forgot it. Basically, Miss Jess is going to supply the plot for today.
All right, we will be moving over to Miss Jessica.
There we go.
Get it out, honey.
So, take it away.
Okay, so this is an envelope system. It's really ratty and old. How old is this? Like
4 years, 5 years?
Yeah, that's great.
Thank you.
It works.
And basically, it has a place for my cards and my checkbook and a notepad to write notes. But I also have, and they're very tattered. But I have. You want to hone in on this? But I have envelopes for each category. Like that one's for pets, and that one's for miscellaneous. That one's for food. We have one for clothing. We have one for date nights or dates with the girls and school supplies, and they kind of change every month. But I love this system. Keeps me on track.
Awesome.
Good.
Wonderful. That's perfect.
Do you wanna,
That's perfect.
No? Okay.
No, I'm not going to mess with your system. You know, I know you're a planner. I don't want to mess with the planner's system. Once you got that, lined up, you keep it there. Okay, so Gail and I are a bit simpler. Again, we're very keep it simple type stuff. Now, I think Jess's strategy works great. If you ever need like a lesson on couponing, she is the queen of couponing.
I'm like a tad to the nerd side.
She's way on the nerd side. She's awesome at it. You can see her about that. But we have 3 items that we run an envelope system on. Dining out and entertainment. We put those 2 together. So if we want to go to the movies, if we want to go bowling, if we want to go out to eat, all that money goes into that envelope. We also do clothing, because that's an easy one to just kind of pick up. Oh, that's on sale, I'm just going to get some of that. Oh, I need 20 pairs of socks, so let's just get that, When you really only need 2, you buy 20, of course, because it's a big bulk package. You save a lot of money, right? And then we also do cash for our kids. We pay them a commission rather than an allowance, which means they do their chores that they're expected to do, but then there's above and beyond type work, and we pay them specifically for those. So it teaches a nice lesson about work equals money. Money doesn't grow on trees. If you do the job, you get the money. If you don't do the job, no biggie, but then you can't buy stuff as much as you want. So we run those items out of envelopes, and that's kind of a good strategy for us. You might have other ways. We tried using one for gasoline one time, but what we realized was you got to buy gas. You're not going to be like, oh, I'm out of money, too bad, no gas in the car. That doesn't work, right? So we just have to budget that and run that and keep track of it. So that didn't make as much sense. Plus then the problem is you have to go inside to pay, and then there's all these little knick-knack things that you could spend a lot of money on if you're not careful. Oh, look, donuts, 2 for $1. Who could resist 2 for $1 donuts, right? I'm trying. I'm trying hard. So, but that one didn't work out well for us. So you'll have to kind of think about what strategy you're going to implement, which envelopes make the most sense for you. The big one for us that really helped was the dining and entertainment one, because that one was killing us. When we did our first honest-to-goodness budget that we screwed up a lot, remember I told you about that last week? We were dying on dining and entertainment. Even though we thought we were going to only spend this much money per month, we went over by double a couple of times. And so we really had to tune that one up a bit. So the way the envelope system works is you pick out however many categories on your budget you want to make envelope items. Then the cash goes into the envelope. You're going to actually need to put some cash in the envelope. Okay, you can't just make it up in your head. Or I saw someone one time try to do it with receipts. They would use their card, but then they would put receipts in there. Well, they forgot to add up the receipts, or they lost a receipt, and at the end of the month, kablooey. You need to go with money. Money in the envelope. When the cash is gone, we'll see what here in just a minute. The advantage is you can't overspend because we're done once the money is gone. So again, I would only recommend using this on things that are variable expenses. If you have set expenses like insurance, an envelope isn't going to work very well because you've got to pay that amount every month. It's usually the same amount every month. It's not going to change. So find out what are your variable expenses. A lot of them are going to be tier 3 once type stuff. But clothing, which was a tier 2 or possibly a tier 1 item, that's also a good one to do the money with, because again, most of us have enough clothing where if we just run out of money, we'll be okay till next month. We're not going to be wandering around getting arrested for being unclothed. So, some good things there. Now, cash flow. What do we do when the bills start showing up before the money is there? Well, we have to come up with some planning. Now, the type of people this shows up with a lot would be, do we have any once-a-month paid people here? Okay, well, quite a few. That's cool, yeah. I used to be a once-a-month person, too. I was a teacher, and they paid us once a month. That was a little tricky, because the money would show up on the 1st, and then by the time we got to the end of the month, it started getting pretty tight. Now, this is also when we didn't budget, really, and so that was probably the other problem. We had a lot of leaks. We had a lot of money going out, and we had no clue where it was going. It was just little things here and there that were killing us. So that could be a reason why your income is off a bit from your expenses when they show up. Then we also have people who are on commissions, bonuses, and other irregular income. Now, some people will say, well, I have irregular income, therefore I can't budget. Wrong answer. You have to budget. You still have to budget, okay? There's just a different way we have to approach it. So budgeting still applies. We have our prioritized spending plan. If you look at the way this budget is set up, it's set up with giving and sharing at the top, savings next, and then your tier 1, tier 2, and tier 3 goes right down the page. I would recommend you approach your spending the same way. Make sure you have the top items covered first. Okay? So if all your money shows up at one time, you want to make sure that you have properly funded groceries. You want to make sure you have the utilities covered. Now the nice thing about it is some places will let you adjust when you have a payment. For example, I know a lot of banks these days with mortgages will say, when do you want to pay? The 1st through the 7th. Now if you get some really flexible ones, they'll let you go out as far as the 15th. So maybe it would be smart if you know I've got a paycheck that shows up on the 1st, and sometimes it might be a little bit late before that money hits the account. Maybe I don't want to have my house payment land on the 1st. Maybe I want to do it on the 15th. Okay? Utility bills, same thing. Usually you can set up a level pay type budget situation where they will debit your account on whichever day you choose. So you have some flexibility and some options with that. Talk to your providers, see what kind of arrangements you can set up so that the money is there when it's ready, when you've actually got the money to pay the bill when the bill shows up. Now if you can't set up that arrangement, what do? You're going to have to develop a cushion. Okay? And that's where the savings is going to come in. We typically run anywhere between $500 to $1,000 in our checking account just as a cushion, so that if for some reason a bill shows up before a paycheck does, we can go ahead and use that cushion, and then it just refills itself automatically. Probably not a bad idea too, just because every once in a while I do my math wrong and I forget to carry a 1. And we've had that situation happen before where I thought, oh wow, I've got this much, and oh whoops, that was in the thousands column and I carried the 1 the wrong way. Thank goodness for that cushion there. That helped us ride it out because the money showed up 2 days later in my paycheck, and well, that was nice. You know, we were on track. We didn't get hit with any overdraft fees. That was good. So just work it right down. Start at the top with your giving and then your savings, and down you go. So that means that perhaps the wants don't get funded until that next paycheck shows up. Okay? And if there's not enough, like if you're on a commission system, so that means some of the wants may not get funded at all. It's possible. At least they don't get funded now, but they may get funded later. And we'll have an example here in just a few minutes on how we do that. So just start at the top and work your way down. Make sure that the house payment or your rent is current. Make sure your utilities are being taken care of. Most of us probably have enough money coming in to take care of those things. If not, we've got some other work to do beyond the scope of this class. Okay? So that's how we're going to organize our spending. Let's take a look at a case study. I'm going to go ahead and hand these out. Just take one pass around. And what we will do is we'll work the first case study together. You can take one for each of you if you like, or you can take one for the couple and work together. It's up to you. You don't have to do it that way, but you can do it however you like. We'll work this first example together, and then I'm going to have you work one on your own and see what we come up with. So in our first case study, we're going to deal with perhaps one of the trickier situations, and that's why one of the reasons why we're going to do it together. We have Bob, who is in real estate sales. So he is a 100% all commission person. He is a single adult, no children, no spouse, and he's been in the business for 8 years. You'll see this example on the top of your sheet, okay? Now, since he's been in the business for about 8 years, he's got some history to look back on, which is good, because it's nice to have a long track record to get some guessing on. His best month ever, he made $10,000. Now, for the purposes of income, we are going to consider this after-tax take-home income. Okay? That way we don't have to worry about setting aside however many dollars for taxes. Now, his worst month, he dropped out. He was $1,000. Now, that doesn't mean Bob's not a good real estate salesman. It just means that one month he had 10 closings, and then another month he maybe barely got one little cheap house sold. And it's just the way things work. You know, people buy houses. They don't buy 3 houses a month, just like clockwork. You know, November, December, that's a slow month. Height of summer, that's when the money is made. So over the course of 8 years, he's come up with this average that typically his income falls in about $4,000. So, good information there. Let's take a look at some of his cash flow, because obviously, as a commissioned salesperson, Bob's really going to have to keep an eye on his money so he doesn't overspend. Just going down the list, these numbers should all be on your page, but if not for some reason, or if there's a discrepancy, don't worry too much. We'll just kind of go with the numbers that are on the board. I hopefully got them all transferred over correctly. So, he is going to budget based off of his average month. And we'll get into it just a minute here, what he does when that doesn't work out quite the way he thinks. So, $400 for giving, that's his 10%. Liquid saving, $200. Hang on to that number in your mind for just a second. Food, he's going to go $300, utilities, $150, housing, $700, transportation, $400, retirement savings, $500. You know, he's a commissioned salesperson. He doesn't have a 401k, unfortunately. He's got some debts he's working on, $250. Clothing, $50. You know, real estate salesman usually has to wear a reasonably decent shirt now and then. You might want to replace some of that. Insurance, he's got broken down into 3 different areas, auto, health, and life. We said these first 2 are pretty much, you got to have them. They're tier 2, but the law says you have to have health insurance. And if you're driving, which Bob, the real estate salesman, he's going to drive, right? He cannot rely on the bus to take his clients around. That would be nice, but he can't. And then life insurance, $15. Now, why so cheap on life insurance? What do we know about Bob? Single, right? He doesn't need a whole lot of life insurance. He has nobody depending on his income to be replaced. And for $15 a month, you can, as a reasonably healthy individual, probably get somewhere between $100,000 to $250,000 of term life insurance. Now, your particular situation might not be quite the same, obviously, so you know, just keep that in mind. We're doing this as an example. Bob, being the smart man he is, realizes he just wants to have some fun, so he's got a little pocket money there, a little walking around mad money that he can just do whatever he wants with, and he doesn't really have an accountability partner per se, but he still just wants to have some money where if he spends it, he doesn't care on what. And then he has sunk funds that total $500. All right. Now, at the bottom of your sheet, you should see the percentages, the target percentages we talked about last class period. Take a look at the numbers Bob has here, and tell me if you see anything that sticks out as maybe not fitting with those numbers. Anything popping up yet? Start out looking at the big numbers. Housing, okay. $700 out of a $4,000 income. Where's he at? Any guesses? Okay. 25% of 4,000 would be 1,000. All right. So is he out of line?
Nope.
Not really. Not really. $700 is actually fairly conservative, even in this area of the country. You can get a fairly decent house for $700.
Transportation.
Okay. Transportation, $400. Is that out of line? What do you think?
No.
Not
Is
too
he
bad.
low on the percentage?
This is good.
Yeah. Now, remember his
Savings.
career, too. His career. He's a real estate salesman. He's going to be driving around a lot more than most of us. He doesn't just drive to the office and drive back. He's constant, driving everywhere. So, in this particular situation, remember we called those target goals, meaning based on your career, you may need to flex those somewhat. Okay? This is not ironclad, Moses saith thou shalt not spend 25, none of that, no. He has to do a little bit of thinking about who he is and what he does. Okay, anything else maybe?
Just savings.
Savings,
Liquid
yeah.
savings.
Savings. What's wrong with
Too
you?
low.
Too low? Okay.
It says 10 to 15%. He's got maybe,
Okay.
5%.
Okay, 5%. But what else has he got going on up there?
He's already funding his retirement in more than a double-digit amount, which is pretty good.
Okay. He's got some retirement savings. What else?
He's doing a sinking fund.
He's got some sinking funds going on. Ah, okay. Remember, saving includes everything for the purposes of our class that is non-retirement related. We mentioned that a while back. I was going to see if you still keyed in on that. So for that, I would not consider this as part of the 10%, but I definitely would consider this and this. So he's totaling how much? $700, right? Does that seem reasonable? Does that seem in line? Or is he a bit heavy?
Yeah, it's a little heavy, but
Okay, you think it's a little heavy. Anybody else want to argue the opposite? So maybe you think it's a little light or just about right? Let's think about who Bob is again. Let's think about his income situation.
I think because his income is unpredictable in some months, he needs that. He
It's
probably
irregular.
needs more almost,
Okay.
just to cover the other
The
expenses.
low months.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, that is absolutely true. When you are an irregular income person, you're going to have to tweak that savings a bit on the high end and maybe even push it way past what we have as a target. Because if he has a $1,000 month, what happens to his budget?
Loan.
it's,
He can cover housing, and he can't drive. No gas money. How's he going to sell houses? You know, he's got to get out there, right? So I would argue he may actually be a bit on the low side, which seems counterintuitive based on what we've talked about. You know, it's so hard for us people who get regular paychecks, like I get a regular paycheck. It's so hard for us sometimes to get into the thought process of someone who doesn't do that, who gets irregular income. You know, I have to fund big sunk fund to cover those lean months when I'm not getting as much money. Okay? Anything else seen out of line? Good stuff so far. I put this together in a way just to make you think a bit, but nothing on here is just terribly out of line, I don't think, based on what we know. Now, let's talk about his total just a little bit. If we add all these numbers up, we should come up with $3,790. Is Bob done with his budget?
no,
No. Why not?
he's got $4,000
Okay.
income.
He's got a $4,000
not
budget.
equaling zero.
It's not, thank you. There we go. Remember, income minus expenses has to equal zero. This was one of the questions that was written down in your selected items. What do we do when we get to the end of the month and there's still money left? What do we do with it? Do we just not care? No, because then what's going to happen to that money?
It's going to go out the window.
Who knows, right? And we are intentional. We are planners. We are good stewards. We are not just, who cares, right? We need to plan. So Bob needs to come up with an idea. He's got $210 that he needs to find somewhere. Now, if you were Bob, where would you put it?
Savings.
Savings might be a good idea. Anything else? Sinking fund, part of the savings? What else? Because he's gonna kill that car, isn't he? That car is going to be dead in a couple of years. He's going to kill it. Not just with the gas, but just it's going to wear out. Okay? Anybody else think maybe they could see an area that they would tweak a bit? Put a
He could take out his debt.
He could work on his debt some, yes. You could always pay ahead and get working on your debt.
Giving.
Giving, sure. Why not? You know, he's at 10%, but we said 10% plus. Anything else? He's a real estate guy now. What would you maybe think?
Clothing budget.
Clothing, yeah, you know. People kind of expect realtors to dress a certain standard. And some professions, that is just a true statement. Now, me, I work out of my house. I can dress like this. Nobody is going to care. So I would not need that, but maybe Bob does. All right, good discussion. Let's take a look at case study number 2. This is the one you're going to work yourselves. Susan, she's age 56. She is a homemaker. She has an Amazon bookstore, and she's been running that for about 5 months. These are her income numbers for those 5 months: 100, 250, 25, 130, 300. She is married to a wonderful man named Jeffrey, who is age 60 and is retired presently. He has a pension income of $2,500 per month. Now, based on this, you have on your sheet some blanks. I want you to take about 5 minutes here, go through and fill out those blanks based on this information alone. So, let's talk just a little bit about their situation. What about their income situation makes this a challenging budget? And it is a challenging budget. I made it that way on purpose. They have to really think, and why is that?
She's got variables. You don't know
Okay.
what she's going to bring in each month. It looks like
Yep.
he's got a steady income though, so
Right.
for me, I'd go based off of a fixed income and then kind of add in hers depending on the month.
Okay.
Her variables are life variables.
This is true. Yes. Okay, good. That was the main point I wanted to emphasize with their income situation. He is the stable income. And so just like with Bob's scenario where he has an average of $4,000 a month, you should probably always count that as kind of your baseline. So if you are a person who receives a certain amount of income every month, but you may get more at some point, you want to always budget off your baseline. Do not budget off your best month, because your best month's not going to happen every month, obviously. That should be kind of like a duh principle, but it's kind of crazy. I've seen commissioned people before. I was in real estate sales for a very brief period of time, and once they hit some sort of a magic number, they'd go out and they'd take all sorts of things, house payments, car payments, based off of like if they had a stellar year last year, and they just figure, okay, that's my life from now on. I'm always going to sell $3 million worth of houses, and that means I'm always going to get $180,000 income. And then what happened? 2008. That will just blow your budget apart.
Gotta get another
okay?
job.
You got to budget based off of a realistic expectation of income. So, what else do we know about her income? Not only is it variable, how much history have we got behind it? Yeah, 5 months. You know, that's just, you can't hardly even budget off that at all, other than just to say, let's get everything baseline first off that $2,500. Let's work down through our budget numbers, and then whatever else is left, icing on the cake type stuff. Now, $2,500 a month. Is that a lot of money? No, it's not. Okay, it's not. I would suggest probably they're going to have a tough time with all these. What are some areas you think they might be particularly low in?
They don't need retirement. They're up there in age, so as much. You
Okay.
know.
They already have a retirement, so do they need to save for retirement?
I mean, a little bit. I mean, because
Even if he dies, that fixed retirement benefit goes to almost like half.
Indeed. Now, I cheated a little bit here. I put a note in here that he has a survivor benefit of $1,750. So yes, it will be reduced.
Yeah.
Could be in half. I think I knocked it down 25%.
Right.
So do they still need to fund some retirement? I would say yes.
and she's younger too.
Say
So
yes.
yeah.
Uh-huh. Yeah. So they've definitely got some work I think to do in there. But what other things might be of particular concern? I mean, are they going to be able to do some giving?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, he's still.
Yes. We got to do that. Okay. Are they going to be doing some saving?
Yeah.
Oh yes. Food, utilities, housing, you know, all these things just, it's going to make this budget really tight. Now, we had some notes in here. They had some desires. New car in 3 years, which might cost $15,000. Pay off the house. Right now, they have a regular house payment of $500. For every $300 extra, it knocks off a month. Now, I know that's not real world math, but I just threw that in there kind of as a number to play with. Okay? So, and then they would also like to give to a charity organization about 5% of their income. Okay? Realistically, I think it's going to be a challenge to make this budget work with those numbers. What would I suggest, or what would you suggest, perhaps, to Jeffrey and Susan? What do they need to do more than anything?
Get more income.
Get more income. Okay? And I wanted to make sure that we saw that with this budget. It's going to be very hard to make this budget work. And I know some folks who are in this situation today. Okay? They've got just very small numbers, but they have very big expenses. And you can cut and cut and cut all day long, but there are certain things that just have to happen. And what is your solution then? Develop more income. Okay? Now, how can you develop more income? Well, I like to see that Susan's got an online store. Okay, that's a neat idea. It's something that can be worked almost as a part-time job, but she's got full-time availability, right? As a homemaker, she could do some other type of small business on the side. What about Mr. Jeffrey?
Go back to work.
He's 60, right? What about an encore career? You know, maybe this is time for him to do something else, right? He's still young. There's nothing in the information that tells us he has a disability where he can't work. Could he help out with that business that's already established? Why, sure he could, okay? So a lot of,
Washington.
I'm sorry, say again.
Go to Washington.
Go to Washington. Hey, there we go. So,
There you go.
a lot of opportunities here, right? Now, they're going to be seeing some good things coming down the road. They should qualify for Social Security benefits here in the next few years, but it's not here today. So they obviously have some gaps that they need to plug into. So that was the main thing I wanted to do with that exercise. All right, let's do a quick Q&A here. In budgeting, every dollar should have a purpose. What happens when you have extra beyond what is needed? We answered that question today, didn't we? Right. It needs to go somewhere.
Savings, sinking fund.
Can't just let it go. Yeah, if all else fails, put it into savings.
Yeah.
You'll figure out something to do with it someday. Don't just let it disappear. Okay, have a plan for it. When do we cross the line from saving and being prepared into being selfish? Great question. Great question.
When your percentages get out of whack.
Okay, percentages get out of whack. If you're saving 30% of your income, is that a good thing? Trick question. Is that a good thing?
Depends on your stage of life.
Depends, right? Are you at a stage in life where you need that much savings? Do you have a lot of future expenses you see coming down the road? Maybe 30% is too low, you know? I think what we tend to do is we tend to filter everything through our perception, where I'm at today. You know, we look over, say, at a neighborhood of really nice houses, and we say, well, who needs a house that nice? You know, you could give so much money to charity, or why do you need that? You know, well, what about me? What about the neighborhood I live in? Do I need a 4-bedroom, 3-bathroom house? No, I don't really, do I? Does it fit within our budget? Yes, it does. Okay, I told you we're at a 40% ratio right now on purpose. If we were not super fast paying off right now, we'd be around 12%. So it fits for us. It fits. And so that's where we really come into this idea of saving has to be tailored really to you and your situation. You always need to save, but the percentage is going to vary, obviously, a lot based on where you are and what your goals are. What if you're making $500,000 a year? Should you have a 10% food budget? Probably not. $50,000 a year is pretty steep for food, right?
It depends. What size is your family?
Okay. I would submit that, let's say you have 10 kids, you could probably feed them on $50,000 a year. Probably, unless they're like my boys, right? So it's going to depend, and I think Sean hit it really good there. It's percentage based, you know. If you have a huge income, then some of these percentages for you are going to be a lot lower. Your giving percentage may be a lot higher. You may be giving 20, 30, 40% of your income. You may also have some goals for saving. Maybe you want to save up and make a very nice charitable donation. That's a possibility. Okay, so a lot of different options. All right, so we kind of went through the Q&A here. Let's just do your homework assignment here real quick, and I'll let Mr. Sean tackle a couple of these topics next week. I don't want to make sure we get to all of them. So we're going to do a little more thinking on your sinking funds now that we've really dug into how to do that. So what I want you to do for this next week, get together in your budget committee meeting, think of all the possible ways you can use sinking funds for big ticket items and for small items. Write them all down on your budget sheet and then transfer them over to your actual budget where you've got your sinking fund total. Okay? This is the thing that helps you build the budget you can actually live with. Because if we don't do it, those irregular expenses that show up 6 months out, a year out, 5 to 10 years out, they're going to blow our budget apart. It might work just great this month, it might work next month, but then, oh no, Christmas. Oh, I can't budget, budgets don't work, Christmas showed up. Ah! No, it works. We just have to use the sinking fund approach to make it work. Okay? Now, Mr. Sean's going to be taking the class next week, and he is going to be talking to you about finding your why. And it ties into all these things, all these goals. So in addition to sinking funds, I want you to think about some goals you've got for your finances. 6 months from today, what do you see wanting to do? Do you want to be a better saver? And if so, how much better do you want to be? If you want to be, if you see something coming down a year from now, perhaps, you want to think about what steps am I going to take today to accomplish that goal? And then 5 to 10 years out, just start thinking about these concepts. Bring him in next week, and he's going to talk to you about some of those items. So.